Okay, and we're live. Here we go.
What?
Welcome.
We're live.
We're live. Welcome to GT Radio on the Geek Therapy Network. Here at Geek Therapy, we believe that the best way to understand each other and ourselves.
You have to hit the record button.
That's good. Thank you for reminding me. I'm at this point, I'm like, are we even ever going to publish podcast episodes anymore? That's not true. But obviously, I am out of practice. Okay, thank you. Do that again.
And you did one click, so we're all
I did
good.
do one click. What a day. Feels like a good day. Welcome to GT Radio on the Geek Therapy. Welcome to GT Radio on the Geek Therapy Network. Here at Geek Therapy, we believe that the best way to understand each other and ourselves is through the media we care about. My name is Josue Cardona. I'm joined by Link Keller
What's up?
and Lara Taylor.
Hey,
Hello. It's your turn, Lara. So what are we talking about today?
it's my turn.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know I'm a little bit late to this train, but I just finished playing Tell Me Why. And I think it's a really good game for many different reasons. It's by Don't Nod. And it's so similar kind of style to Life is Strange, but which we've talked about at length before. But this game is, I don't know. I don't know. I might have liked it more than Life is Strange. Maybe, kind of, maybe. I don't know.
Okay. Okay, that's true. It's fine.
It's okay if it's
Still
true.
out.
But I'm in love with Chloe in Life is Strange, so a little different. But tell me why the premise of the game is you are playing identical twins, one of which is a trans man, and they can talk to each other in their heads, and they also see their memories come like replay in front of them. And it got me thinking because the two of them as two different individuals will see the same situation differently. And in the game, you get to pick which one is. They don't necessarily say it as like the real one, but you go with believing whichever one of the two at certain points. And it was a good metaphor a few times this week, talking with clients who have actually played the game, and even myself, looking at how our emotions and our experiences and our internal states influence how we see things that are happening in front of us. This, like, I don't know, something happens in front of me and my wife also sees it, and we could read something completely differently. Even if it's an objective thing that happens, like a car crashes into another car. Well, I don't know, somebody sees a person's face and thinks it's angry, and somebody thinks it's like they were confused and like disoriented. I don't know. But in the game, there are a few of these moments where you get to decide and they deliberate like, no, you're wrong. She was mad. She wasn't sad that day. She was mad, and this is what happened, and this is how the argument went. It's just a really cool thing to explore.
So the game plays out that way, like as both characters, they both see things differently, and then you have to, like, what is your role within the game?
You're playing the two twins. You trade off on which of them you are controlling at any given scene, and they're sort of walking around their home that they grew up in, and interacting with the townspeople, and sort of like Life is Strange, just sort of walking around and interacting with things and reading, the little blurbs about them. It's mostly just storytelling, but every so often there are these, major moments where the two siblings are, just discussing what's like, oh, hey, you remember when that thing happened when we were kids? It's like, yeah, I remember this story. And they're like, what? I remember this story. And I don't know, there's probably like 4 or 5 that you choose as being
Yeah.
like, this one is the more believable one, or as ends up being non-spoilery, the last one, the big one that you build up to this moment where you're deciding which version of a memory to believe. It has less to do with which one is real and which one is more emotionally fulfilling for you as the player to apply to these characters you have come to learn and care about.
Right.
There is not a right answer.
There's not a right answer, and much like Life is Strange, it tells you which one you pick and what percentage of people picked that choice. It is like the whole premise is there's big family secrets, big family trauma, and you are trying to figure out what happened as an adult to you as a child, to these characters as a child.
Whoa. Okay.
Or as children. So in the same way as and I think I related to it because there are a lot of things coming out now, say about my mom and how she took care of her health and other things that I didn't know when I was a kid. And I think when they're kids in the game, they're about 11, which is about when my mom died. And so learning these things as an adult, I'm like, whoa, I didn't know that happened. So watching them interact with the townspeople as adults and get to know them as adults and like, oh, whoa, I just thought this thing was happening when we were kids. I never would have guessed that mom and her friend were having this issue or whatever it is, and it's an interesting experience seeing how they play on the memories like that and like how, different perspectives and seeing like people focus on different things and different, and have differing opinions. And there's like Link said, there's only so many of choices, but you see a lot more memories. And then most of the memories, it'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that. And they both remember the same thing.
There are also elements where you get to not necessarily see like flashback style what happened in the past, but the other characters that you're interacting with will also refer to past events with their own particular perspective. And if you're paying attention, you start picking up on that stuff, and it's really interesting to see not just, how do people prioritize the things that they remember, how emotions affect memory, but also, the language we choose to retell stories. That ends up being more of the memory than the events, is when you retell a story over and over again. And so getting to see these young adults sort of be all like, I know that story that you used to say is bullshit. I'm an adult now. Like, be straight with me. And the person's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I've told this version of the story so long that's the true version.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I found this Post-it note in the back of the freezer that says otherwise. Ooh, mystery.
Do you ever see the truth?
Sure. From two perspectives of two different
so there's
preteens.
So what you're seeing is their recollection of events. You're never actually, there's never like a neutral, true perspective. That like you're never wrong.
What would that be?
There is no nothing happens in a vacuum. There is no neutral, true perspective.
What I mean is, like, there are video recordings of events of like when I was a kid.
There's omniscient Back to the Future style where it reveals the real version. It there is no real version. All that exists is what exists in our heads.
I mean, I guess.
Because even if you watch a video of your childhood, you might still remember it differently than another person who was there, even if you're watching it, right?
Yeah. But like oh, I remember my room was painted blue, and it's like, no, it was green, and it's like, oh yeah, prove it, and it's like, oh well, here's the video. It's like, oh, right, like,
Well,
that's
those
not
kinds of things,
important.
but that's different from like experiences and interactions and the kinds of things that they're dealing with in the game.
And that's why I'm curious. Like, I love this concept of memory, and I haven't played the game. That's why I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm very interested.
It's really good. It's actually pretty short. It's only 3 chapters.
I'm looking forward to it now because I've had conversations like this recently, and I was talking to someone the other day about the research that was done on memory around 9/11, and how everybody like has a very clear memory of where they were, and
90% of the time they're not
like
accurate.
they kept changing, right? Like this one thing. It was a great experiment because, like, sure, in general we know human memory is garbage, but like, how do you measure that? Well, you take a giant traumatic event for an entire country that everybody knew, like collectively experienced, and then ask them every 2 or 3 years to retell you the story. And some of them were completely different. Like, they were in a different place. Like, everything was different. And like, I get it. Like, I think I've been telling the same story for 10 years. I didn't write it down. Nobody recorded it. And I don't trust my own memory. I say that, but at the same time, like, there's no doubt in my own memory, right? Like, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't like bet money that I'm 100% right, because I don't trust my own memory. But there's no reason for me to not trust it other than knowing that human memory is garbage. So I was just curious if some of the events in the game play out differently depending on, like, did you if there were any facts that were that were like, if we both remembered wrong, right? Oh, now there's a different ending or something like that.
There are some facts, but like, as far as the big things, you basically get to choose. You choose as the player what the answer is, whether it is, and it's not even a definitive answer. It's, this is what we're choosing to believe. This is what we're taking from the information we've gathered. And there's one point in the game that I really liked, that one of the characters starts having panic attacks and not able to, and the memories are playing tricks on them. So things that people have said about them in passing, or the thoughts that this character has had going through their head, will then appear, and they physically see these memories. Like, it's like these glittering outlines of the characters, but like, things that never happened start happening as if they were memory in the same way. And we do that all the time as human beings. We will think that somebody said something about us, and they definitely did not, but we tell ourselves that's what happened. And so at one point, there's also this point of like, are our memories real? Is this what really happened? Because this has been happening to me, and I know that the things that are popping up as memory are not real. So maybe overall, this whole thing has been bullshit. And it's really cool to play through that too.
I cannot wait to play this game.
Yeah.
It also has a couple of cool puzzles, which I love.
I love the puzzles, and I love the storytelling aspect of how, I mean, the two characters are trying to figure out something about their mom. And as kids, the mom developed this whole like fairy tale, and they are goblins, her goblins. And then like, they have all these different forest animals, and she's telling her story through these fairy tales she wrote for her kids. And I think there's a lot of power in that too. This game is beautiful and amazing.
Yeah, that's definitely, part of the themes that they're grappling with, is like, the mom took a series of traumatic events and turned it into a tale that she could then share with her children to try and explain, like, this is, why we're here and what's happening in our past, and, try and answer some of the questions, but in a manageable way without actively delving into
Traumatizing
your
her
own
children.
trauma and then just being like, here, intergenerational trauma for you. I mean, she ended up doing that a little bit anyways, but in a fun storytelling way.
Mhm.
But it really adds to the whole thing about, you know, the power of stories and how, you know, memory and storytelling go together, and how the feelings end up being way longer lasting impact wise than any particular like plot elements or character elements. It's like these kids had, you know, their mom basically drew them a beautiful book, a beautiful fairy tale book with all these stories inside, and it's like as adults they're like, oh, this like friendly bear character is our friendly bear character neighbor. They were the townspeople all along. And it's like,
Mhm.
I mean, 11-year-olds aren't that dumb, right? Come on. But it's like that wasn't the point of the story. They didn't have that context that it was like, no, mom's not just making this up. Mom is telling us something in a way that she hopes we can handle. It's really good. It's there are a handful of parts that made me a little uncomfortable, just in the way of having two siblings who are very close to each other, but they have been estranged for a while. And so there's this sort of familiarity stranger element. And it's like, you are the person I can trust more than anybody else in the whole world. It's like, you're my other half. But then also like,
I don't know you.
I don't know if I can trust you with like these littler things, or how to even bring them up to share them with you, to, you know, provide you a chance to earn trust or whatever. And so having a couple of scenes be like, okay, choose which one you think is real, was really, really hard, because for me, projecting onto this choice, if I felt, for me, it's like, if I choose this one, I am completely invalidating this other person's experience. But if I support them, then I am causing harm currently. And so it's like that, it's really tough to be all like, I want to validate everybody's feelings and traumas. And it's like, yeah, whatever you remembered, sure, that's what happened exactly. Like, no cap. It's like, oh wait, I have to choose. Shit.
And it doesn't help that in some situations when you choose, it doesn't hurt the person as much as you think it will. Like, they're like, oh yeah, I guess I can see that way. That makes sense. Kind of thing. And it also depends on how you're playing each of the characters too.
Yeah.
And how you think, because that's another aspect. You get to pick how angry Tyler is at certain things, and how angry Allison is at certain things, and how much she wants to push back on things. So yeah, the player has a lot of choice, doesn't have a lot of choice, but still has a lot of choice in how they are going to play these characters. And I enjoy it, but I do get your point about invalidating people's feelings.
It's only, I mean, I don't want to be specific, because I do want people to just play the game, and maybe you'll choose something different than I chose. But it's like there were definitely at least two choices where I was just like, this isn't fair. I don't want to pick. Which I guess that's, you know, if you don't care, then like, why play? Well, so and obviously it's impactful.
There's no third option, which is like, well, maybe you're right about this, and maybe I'm right about this, which is an option that you can have in real life. That hopefully, if people are disagreeing that much in a heated situation, you have someone who can moderate that conversation and be like, oh, maybe this is right about this, and maybe this is right about this, and there's a place where you can, the Venn diagram crosses. But because it's a game and you need to move the story along, you have to pick.
Do you, is your perspective or your character chosen for you throughout the story?
Yeah, you don't get to choose when you switch.
Got it.
No. Yeah.
So sometimes you are one character and sometimes you are the other. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So did you ever feel like you weren't either? because of that?
No, I think because so much of it is like Life is Strange, is you are hearing the internal monologue of the
Mhm.
person as they interact and move around through spaces. You feel very much like whichever character you are currently embodying, because they are literally saying their thoughts at you in
Yeah.
their tone of voice with their,
Yeah, yeah.
inflection and everything. So there are definitely parts where, it was more apparent that they were twins, and that their reactions to things really lined up. And then there were parts where it was really obvious how they had grown up, and they were different human adults and had their own perspectives about things,
And had very different life circumstances in the 10 years that they're apart.
and completely
Yeah.
different contexts for coping with the thing that led to them not being together for that amount of time. Like
Exactly.
completely different people helping them process that stuff from, 11 to 20 something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I thought was really cool, is getting to see the way that,
Yeah.
see, Tyler goes to like a sort of
boarding
care
group
program
home
thing.
Yeah.
A group home basically. And so it's like his relationship is with a bunch of like strangers, but also people who are either going through similar things to him or are trained professionals intending to help them cope with that, versus Allison, who stayed home. And so it's like she got support from a bunch of people she already knew, which is good because there's already connection and trust there. But also they're just neighbors, and the person who works at the grocery store and stuff like that. And so it's like not necessarily as well equipped to be like, hey, you were traumatized, can we talk about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. Link, do you have one of the twins that you relate to more than the other?
This feels like a trick question. Tyler. I feel like I relate more to Tyler.
I feel like I relate more to Tyler too, even though Allison's experience is probably closer to my own experiences as a human being.
I think I think my like, how do I want to phrase this? I think I am probably actually more like Allison in that I'm not confrontational, and I will prioritize other people's comfort over my own. But in my heart, I want to be like, fuck that, and a cab, and I don't care what you say, you're not my real dad. Which, maybe that is a fun space for me to explore on my own.
Oh, this game is so good. Oh, we got Jonathan in the chat asking what game we're talking about. We're talking about Tell Me Why.
Yeah.
It's another don't nod game.
Yeah. There's so many things recently that remind me of they're like a part of this conversation. Like I'm listening to a podcast called Bipolar Bicoastal, and it's two twins who live on opposite sides of the country, and both were eventually diagnosed with bipolar, and they have these moments where they're remembering events from their past, including their own manic episodes, and they remember them differently. So it's almost like I'm gonna tell them to play this game.
Yeah.
And right before we started recording, I recorded an episode of Conspiracy of Light, which is the Babylon 5 podcast that I'm doing with Woody Harris. And we discussed an episode called A Late Delivery by from Avalon. And it deals with a character who went through a traumatic event and then dissociates, and basically the whole episode is about the power of story. And he ends up like believing that he is King Arthur in a very specific story about redemption and absolution, and he goes to this place to kind of play out this version of the trauma, like you were both explaining, that it's like this makes it in a way that we can actually process these emotions without being direct and explicit. And the whole episode was about the power of story. So I'm super excited that that's a theme of the day. And the game sounds really cool. Have either of you? I mean, we all have siblings, and I've had those conversations where we're talking about past events and we either remember them completely differently, or one of us is like, that never happened, and I'm like, yeah, or vice versa. Did you think about any experiences? Like, I'm assuming that you've had those experiences. First of all, I am not even asking that. So I'm just curious if you thought of any of those of your own while you were playing the game.
For me, it's different. My siblings are so much older than me that a lot of my memories end up, and I guess this feeds into it. And I did think about some of it when, a lot of the times there will be this attitude, not from my siblings, but from my brother-in-law about, well, you were just a kid, you don't remember. Right. And I'm like, no, I know for a fact that this happened. Or these ideas, like there was a whole conversation I had where I was in Girl Scouts and my mom was the cookie mom, right? And so we would store the cookies for all of us to be dispersed and dispensed. We were the dispensary, the cookie dispensary. But we kept the crates of cookies in our garage to give to all the Girl Scouts in the area and have them give out their shipments. And my brother-in-law swears that my mom did not like the idea that Girl Scouts put us out there and used us as tools to sell cookies. And I'm like, but then why would she want to be the cookie mom? Why would she volunteer? She could have done anything else besides being the cookie mom. And he was like, well, you just don't remember. You were a kid. And I'm like, don't tell me that about my mom, who I lived with for longer than you did and knew longer than you did. Just because you were an adult doesn't mean that you remember right.
That reminds me of a lot of situations where because I also have an older sister who's 12 years older than me, and same person, completely different mother that she had than what I had. Same thing with my grandmother. Like the grandmother from my mother's side, the stories I hear about her when she, the way she treated my mom and my sister and my older sister are completely different than the sweet old lady who made us candy and stuff, right? When I was a kid. So it's like sometimes it's both can actually be true because like you can change your mind, right? Like maybe it's just like two different versions of your mom, but I understand that like they don't line up. Like, how is that person the same person that I remember? How did that person say that and then also said this, years later?
Well, and see, the thing with that situation is I have the same situation where my sister is 12 years older than me. And I will fully admit with my sister that like we had a different experience. My mom was a very different person when she was raising my older brother and my sister than 14 and 12 years later when she was raising me, because she was with my dad, who was a completely different type of person, and she was in a warm and loving relationship at the time. And so my sister and my brother will talk about my mom, and there were like no hugs, and love was shown with gifts and things like that. And yes, I'm a spoiled child. I got a lot of gifts when I was young too, but like there was more hugging in my family when I was growing up and things like that. So it's interesting to get my sister's perspective because I trust my sister's perspective, but when my brother-in-law comes in and says something that I'm like, you don't even know, that's different to me. But see how my experiences with the other person also influence my memory and influence how I feel about a situation. I'm confrontational with him, but with my sister, I trust her opinion on
right.
who my mom was.
Yeah. Like just your feelings towards. I don't know if we've ever talked about this. In case your family's listening, I'm like,
I don't. They're not listening.
They won't. I mean, they might someday. It doesn't. Yeah. It's like yeah. A person. there's so many emotions involved, right? That it completely,
Yeah.
there's a trust component. There's just like I'm not saying this is the case, but like, you know, like, oh, that person's so annoying. I'm like, you know, just anything that comes out of their mouth, like is harder to accept.
Definitely.
And the other way around too, right? It's like, oh, well, if this person said it, then it must be true. That gets a lot of people in a lot of trouble also.
And I think there's some aspects of that, if I remember correctly, there are some aspects of that in the game as well.
Oh, this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's we've been dancing around it for a little bit here, but it comes down to cognitive dissonance. Is when you hit that patch of friction between what you believe and what somebody else believes. Is like sometimes it doesn't matter, but if it causes that cognitive dissonance where it's like something isn't lining up, something is not maintaining the continuity I expect it to, is like, then is like, oh, wee woo.
Yeah.
I have to actually
Is it them?
think
Is it me?
and talk
What
about
is
it.
Yeah.
Is like
Mhm.
somebody's wrong and I need to find out who right now.
It's most likely everybody's wrong.
It's
That's a secret.
statistically, it's everybody is mostly wrong.
My secret is that I'm always wrong. Everybody's wrong. Huh. But yeah, that part about the emotion, like I've had experiences recently where I'm like, I remember being very angry about this at one point, and now like I'm not angry about it. I don't remember why I was so angry the last time. Like there's no necessarily rational meaning behind it. And I was talking to our friend Ali Matu the other day, because there's an unpublished episode of this podcast. Okay. That we
Only
recorded.
one.
There's a couple, but there's
Only one.
Yeah, there's one where we watched Batman v Superman when that movie came out, right? And then we immediately met afterward. And I remember this is my memory of the event. My memory is that he was so angry about like we were doing like a discussion about the movie and the themes in it and stuff, and I liked it, but I remember him hating it so much that after we recorded, I said, I'm not publishing this. This doesn't feel like a Geek Therapy podcast episode. There's no way I'm gonna post this. And I don't know if you want me to, like, you want everybody to hear this like rant of yours about how much you hated this movie. And so the other day we spoke, and because the Snyder Cut came out, and he watched all the DCU movies, and he's like, I gotta tell you, I really enjoyed Batman v Superman this time.
Oh my God.
And then his rationalization was that he, again, this is my I think this is what he was trying to say, was like, oh no, like, because I watched the extended edition now and just made such a big difference. And I was like, I've seen both. I don't think there's that big of a difference, and I don't think there's any difference that would have like undone the rage that you felt.
Like I prefer the extended edition, and I think it adds more to it, but I don't think it changes the story that much.
I can't imagine someone being like, oh, this movie's like making them throw up, and it's like, oh, those extra 22 minutes, just like, now it's really good. Now I really think it's a great movie. And so we didn't really get into it much, but I brought up the question, like, and there's two ways to see it too, right? It's like, is it well, it's funny. I asked him the question of like, how do you what do you think was going on at those two different times when you watched the movie, and do you think they affected your perception of the experience, like that they changed your experience? And it was an interesting thing, because the way he replied was completely, it caught me by surprise, because he like interpreted the question the opposite way, which is also relevant, which was like, oh yeah, no, I often see movies that change the way I feel. So basically what he was saying, right, what he answered was like, oh, I've had events that occur and then they change my mood at the current time. Like, oh, this thing happened and it made me happy, or this thing happened and it made me angry, which is a whole other conversation, like a whole other piece of the memory puzzle, right? It's like, depending on the, like, trauma has like usually these very negative experiences, right? That like stamp your brain and like make all these connections because it was just so intense and negative. But there's also like really great memories that you can have. And it's like, oh, every time I smell, like this, I don't know, candy, it reminds me of the day we went to the carnival, blah, 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 right? It's like they associate because the stronger the emotion, the more they connect. And so we never really had the conversation of like, oh, well, maybe like at that moment I was feeling a particular way before the event, and then it affected the way that the memory was put into the file cabinet and cataloged and noted. Those are, again, they're two sides to kind of this memory story, especially when you're dealing with, and in the game it sounds like it's dealing with a lot of, at least at the end, you're building up to a very serious a thing.
The whole game is a serious thing with content warnings galore.
Okay.
Galore. Galore. But it is, and they even put a warning in the beginning of the game, which was nice because I don't think they did that with Life is Strange.
They did not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it is good warning at the beginning.
This is kind of again kind of related. It's a discussion that I've been seeing often, and I explained to a coworker either yesterday or today the idea of the Mandela effect. They hadn't heard what this was, and it is like I tend to question my own memory a lot in general. And actually, I used to think about this so often that I could feel that it was kind of affecting my work as a therapist. It definitely influenced my work with kids, and I was like I need to get past the whether what they're saying is true or not, right? Like isn't what matters, right? But at sometimes I was like, it would make a huge difference, I think, in this situation if right, if this event actually happened this way or that way, or who's actually telling the truth. In couples counseling, I can go into a whole thing about that in a little bit. Two people telling you the same story that just happened this morning, and they're completely different, and you're like, did anybody take a picture? It's hard.
Some couples counselors will record you and play it back for you.
Yeah. I mean, I've used stuff like that a lot in the past because it can make a difference. It can make a difference at times. And it doesn't, and I'm not even saying that like, oh, because we caught a lie, because I often don't think that either of them, that anybody
are lying.
Yeah. I just think that the memory is actually faulty, right? That there's something about it that is untrue. And sometimes that makes a huge difference. Sometimes you can believe that something happened in a certain way, and then there's like it's like a revelation can make a huge difference. So you're like, but I thought that this happened, and I've been so angry about it, and now I have evidence that it didn't happen, and now what do I do with that information? But I know I lost the thread of what I was saying at some point here. I tried to connect too far back into the past, and now I forgot. The point being that I don't trust my own memory, and this comes up often, but I don't know where else I was going with that. But that's probably the general takeaway I want the both of you to have right now. Anybody?
Just talking about couples counseling and how you can get to very different versions, and it's like sometimes the feeling is you need to like unbury the truth of what really happened, and a lot of times, and that is something that comes up in the game. Tell Me Why is like, what the truest truth doesn't even fucking matter, because
they can both be true.
That's not what you're engaging with. You are engaging with a human being who has thoughts and feelings and attitudes and beliefs that shape not only their memory, but how they, transmit that to you and how you receive it. And nothing is coming through perfectly clear, the truest of true versions. That doesn't exist. And so a lot of times I think getting people to free themselves from that aspect of being like, well, this is what I thought happened, and you think something totally different happened. Like, how could we ever solve this problem? It's like, okay, well, dive deeper into it. Why? Like, what made you feel that that was the thing that was happening? Like,
Yeah.
what previous experience did you have that, you know, has assumptions that are secretly affecting this thing that you don't realize unless I ask you, like, has this happened before?
Oh, there are plenty of times Nina and I will be watching a show and completely read a scene differently. And she's like, this person was motivated by this. And I was like, no. This is what they're thinking and this is what they're motivated by. And each of those things come from our own experiences or personal experiences or other stories we have read or heard or I mean, there are times where she's actually right because she went to school and learned about storytelling and I'm like, oh wow, I didn't see that coming. But like there are times where like we feel like we're speaking the same language but completely different dialects.
The last time we talked about the Falcon and Winter Soldier, I don't remember if it was last week or the week before. It was probably the week before that. I remember like actually like switching, like changing my mind about something as I was talking about it. I was like, no, I read it this way. And then afterwards I was like, but wait a minute. I remembered one thing completely differently and changed the entire way that I saw it. And the couples thing, so, I mean, it depends, right? To give a specific example, like a couple would come in and argue about something like, I told him to buy milk and he didn't buy the milk again, right? And then the partner might be like, no, but you know, he told me, he didn't tell me to buy the milk, right? And then it's like, oh, okay, like sometimes you get stuck on that point, and obviously that's not the point. It's like, but why were you such an asshole about them not getting the milk?
The milk,
right? And that part is kind of hard. But also, I'll get to the also in a second, right? But in there, right, like it takes like some finesse to like get past that moment right there, and it's like, why are you so upset? Because they never listen to me, and therefore they do not love me, right? And then you keep going down the thing. It's like, wait, that may not be what's happening, but like you still get hung up on that one thing. There's a whole other piece which is like, oh, actually this person is developing, like actually has a cognitive impairment and is actually like, there are multiple, like it could be ADHD symptoms, or it could be like this person is older and like they actually have problems with memory, or they've had memories for a long time and this is a problem that they've always had,
or they have a hearing problem.
They have happens a lot.
I've worked with so many children where like the parents are like, why won't my kid listen? Why won't my kid do what I'm telling them to do? And there's a language barrier or a hearing problem, or sometimes both.
Cultural differences. A text can arrive out of order. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but like that completely changes the context. But that's not memory. But you know, like those. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to what makes it hard is that we don't talk about the fact that our memory is garbage, and that how much does that matter or not matter, but like it's something like we just take it at we assume that what we're remembering at this very moment is 100% true. Like we think of our memories as infallible, and that like gets us into a lot of trouble, and it's something hard to navigate. And I can't believe there's a whole game about it. I'm really excited to play. I downloaded it yesterday, but I didn't have time to play. Damn.
It'll be really good to hear, because it does. I don't know if it does the thing where it compares your friends and what they've picked, but it does compare overall who picked what. So it'll be interesting to see what you
take
picked.
Pictures? Because I mean, we can kind of.
I wonder if there's a way to go back and figure it out. I'm gonna open up the game soon.
Look up what you.
I'll have to look up a fax or something, because I don't have access to the Xbox anymore.
Well, and Josue, if you take pictures, I can be like, oh yeah, I picked the other one.
Because, it was recent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna play it on Xbox. It's on Game Pass. Did you? I'm curious why you played that game now.
So it actually has to do with Life is Strange, because the new Life is Strange was announced, and I was like, I want to play all the games, and I've had Tell Me Why. I wanted to play it when it first came out, but I don't have an Xbox, so I bought it when it came out on Steam, and then never played it. So I was like, I'm gonna play it now.
Is Tell Me Why in the same universe?
Yes. Oh, there is a reference. If you look at a
Oh,
poster
okay,
in one of the
okay,
rooms, there's a reference.
Uh-oh. Okay.
You're gonna have to look at everything. It's
Okay.
great.
Is Tell Me Why, was that the one? No, the kid with the super.
That's Captain Spirit.
Captain Spirit was a prequel to Life is Strange 2,
Hmm.
right? Okay. But they're all in the same universe then.
They're all in
including
the same
yeah.
universe. At least as far as you know, with Tell Me Why, like they do mention some Life is Strange references in there, so it's good.
Okay.
The soundtrack was okay, not as good, but there's beautiful vistas in Alaska. It's wonderful.
Okay. I like Alaska. Okay. So that's why you played it now, because of the announcement.
Because of that.
But you said
And I'm
you
so
said it
glad I
came
did.
up, right? You said it came up like with clients and stuff. Like it actually something.
Yeah, I mentioned, like, we talk about what games we're playing, and I mentioned, I just finished playing Tell Me Why, and they're like, that I played that a while ago. It's really good. And then we talked about memory and stuff, and that was good.
Yeah.
I have another client who was really excited when I told them the premise, and they're like, I want to play. And we talked about how triggering it can be. So there is that too.
Yeah. Okay. Damn. Yeah. No, this was. Yeah, I'm been thinking about these topics a lot lately, a lot, and I think about memory often, and I try to say every chance I get, human memory is garbage. It's,
You like when I bring up memory? It's okay.
I do. I get very excited
because you get to say it's garbage.
I get to say human memory is garbage. Yeah. It's yes. Yeah.
I will say that I feel like I have a pretty good memory, but it is also garbage.
Yeah, most people I think most people, even people who are like, I don't have a good memory, you just say stuff because you assume that it's off of memory. Everything is off of memory, and we assume
What else can you do?
that's all. That's the only thing you can
all
do.
I know is I am pretty damn good at trivia, and so I can remember those random things. But when it comes to events, I can also remember where things are in my house. I have a pretty good visual memory. Other than that,
when Apple announced AirTags this week, I texted so many people about it. I'm so excited.
Oh, you texted me.
I'm so excited to pay $29 so I can find my keys.
I said that Nina needs some AirTags, but I'm her AirTag. Like, I can see her looking around the house, and I'm like, your wallet is here, your keys are there, your glasses are there, your phone is there, without even looking.
It may not be helpful if the problem is that I literally cannot see them anymore, right? Like the whole object permanence thing. If that's the problem, the AirTags aren't going to help. She's gonna get more mad. It's like the phone says it's right here in front of me, and you're looking, and you see it, and Nina's just
and
like,
it's under a
page.
It's under like it's in between like 5 sheets of paper or something.
No,
just
it's just right there. There's nothing else there. It's just the only thing in the front, and
you're
just,
gonna be mad at yourself for not being able to.
Yeah. Oops. I'm impressed, but that's also a memory thing. I mean, that's
Your phone's gonna be like, my keys are right here. Oh.
The feature I use the most on my Apple Watch is the one that makes my phone beep, because this happens just constantly, and it's not like I live in a small apartment, right? It's not like there's only so many places it can be, and I use it every single day. Every day. It's not, human memory. Some human memory is more garbage.
Nina got a red iPhone so that she could see it.
Yeah. Well, okay. Any closing thoughts or things about Tell Me Why, or maybe other games that or other types of media that touch on similar things that you might that might be interesting to explore?
I don't know. I just really appreciate it. I didn't even get into like the representation in the game or the story itself, it's just a wonderful game. Tell Me Why is a wonderful game, and I think that people should play it. And it's going to bring up a lot of emotions. It's good. It's a good game.
Okay. Link, anything? Any thoughts?
Like in Life is Strange, there was a part early on that I got stuck in because I couldn't highlight the right thing to interact with, and it was very frustrating. So, I guess.
Warning.
Mhm.
Oh,
Warning. There were a couple of
like
those
me.
on PC. There were a couple of those even that I had a hard time clicking the right things.
Mine was getting under the house. Like I knew that's where I needed to
Okay.
go. I knew like that was the step, and I'm just walking around like that looks like a door right there. Why can't I click on it? It's like I had to go interact with a different thing first before it would let me open.
Yeah.
Anyways, I got very frustrated at that. And as I was playing, I'm like, that's a lot of points I'm docking off of you guys here. Tell me why. Like, you better get your act together, or I'm gonna give up and stop playing this game. Like
Tell
I don't
me
know.
why you didn't
10 minutes
fix this.
later, I had a door puzzle and I solved it on my first try. And I'm like, I'm the coolest puzzle master of all time. This is the greatest game. Can't wait to find out what happens next.
The door puzzle, they were like, you should just smash through the door. We should just smash through the door. And I'm like, I'm just trying to read the story.
I want to smash. I'm reading the book. Hold on. Wait, hold on.
Interesting.
It's such a good game.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't played it. I'm gonna check it out. I can't think of any other games that have kind of a memory aspect to it like that.
I feel like there are definitely like indie narrative games that cover similar themes, but I do not have any recommendations off the top of my head, unfortunately.
Yeah, and some of the things you were talking about reminded me of LA Noire, where it's like you're interviewing people and like, yeah, again, I haven't played either actually, but
LA Noire is a lot more into the concept of there being a one true truth that you can figure out.
Right, and so this game
And
is
that
about
one's-
deduction.
And
Right?
this
It's
game
about-
is not about that.
No.
yeah.
And LA Noire is less about memory and more about reading people.
Mhm.
Yeah. But that's what reminded me
Yeah.
of it, right? Because it's like, even though you can read your sibling's mind and stuff like that, it sounds like that's a part of it. I like that.
Mhm.
The other movie I thought of that I remember made me think, I mean, there's Inside Out. Inside Out? Is it? No.
Inside Out, the Pixar movie?
Yeah. I was like, that's the name of the movie, right? Yeah. I like the way it, like, I even referenced it before about like the file cabinet with the memory and all that, right? Like there's something that I like that it explores in that movie is like the idea of I forgot her imaginary friend's name.
Bing Bong.
Bing Bong, right? He's like fading away like a memory, right? Like it's like forgotten, and there's these memories, like you see that they like the brain can only hold so much information, right? And it doesn't go into the science of recall and like all of these other things that is super interesting, and I'm not going to geek out about now, but I like the simplicity of like this long last file cabinet, and that if you just the longer it takes for you to revisit that one file, sometimes eventually it just like gets dumped out the back, right?
Mhm.
And I think about that like that analogy of that representation of it a lot when I have those conversations with people where I'm like, don't you remember that this happened? And they're like, no. It's like because they didn't care, because they haven't thought about it since it happened. I've thought about it repeatedly, possibly to the detriment of like I've now like remolded it into something that it's not, or like I remembered it, but like there's no the other person hasn't thought about it, so it's not. I mean, it makes sense that they completely forgot about it. But and there's a movie called Memento. Have you ever seen Memento? By
It's been a long time.
you don't remember
but
it?
yes.
It's in a file cabinet, it
Links
went behind. Yeah, and that movie plays with memory in a very interesting way, and you don't know what's happening until because of the way that the movie is shot and the way that everything is presented, and the premise is that the person has no short-term memory, and so you're actually seeing the events in a particular order that you're not aware of, and it's great. And like I remember on the DVD, like it had a version where the story was in order, right? And seeing it after you had just seen it, like, and all the revelations, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, like all of these things, it was so cool. And like that whole movie, every single scene, the person is working off of not the memory of the events that just occurred, but working off of like a small piece of information that was left for them to then continue to proceed. Anyway, if you like memory, I think that's a fun movie. It's a Christopher Nolan classic. Classic? Yeah, it's pretty old. It's good. It's good. It's a good movie.
Pretty old. We're pretty old.
We're pretty old too. Yeah.
I saw the college humor joke satire version of Memento starring Donald Glover long before I saw the movie. And so when anybody brings up Memento, all I think of is the college humor version. Just not appropriate, but very funny.
That's funny. And Christopher Nolan's more recent Tenet is actually very similar to that movie, even though it's not about memory. It's about time travel. But in a way,
memory and time travel are related.
The same kind of story. Yeah. Anybody wants to geek out about that, please reach out to me, or just bring it up, the comments for this video at the GT forum and the Facebook group and the Discord. We got links to all that in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to geek out and do good. And we'll be back next week.
Bye.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We did it 2 weeks in a row on YouTube. Say goodbye to YouTube, everybody. Nobody's going to say goodbye to YouTube. Okay.
Bye, YouTube.
How do I stop broadcasting? I think
you got to figure that. Now we should just wave and wave.
Just keep waving until I figure it out.
Keep waving until you figure it out. Bye. Bye.